you are an entrepreneur, a professional, a speaker, or a coach, and although you've come a long way, it's time for you to take it to the next level. We've got you. This is the Author to Authority podcast. We'll help you use authority and influencer marketing to build your business stronger and faster by publishing a book. You'll hear from guests that are thought leaders in sales, marketing, networking, communication, social media, promotion, and business leadership. Let's do it. This is the Author to Authority podcast. And now your host, the extraordinary word ninja, Kim Thompson-Pinder.
Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. I'm here with Hamilton Bolduc, and today is an interesting day. It's the first official day of winter here in Nova Scotia. It is snowing, raining, sleeting, and hailing outside. So today I want to welcome Hamilton, and he is going to be talking about improving your content strategy. And I think this is just such an important topic because if you don't have a strategy to your content, then you're wasting a lot of time producing something that's getting you no results. So I'm very interested in today's conversation. Now, Hamilton is a growth marketer turned entrepreneur that loves to find ways to help people find opportunities. And after being referred to as a connector, he's finally found the right way to build a business that he's passionate about. So welcome to the show, Hamilton.
Hey, great to be here.
So Hamilton, I want to hear about your story. I love the topic that we're doing, and I know that your story relates to it. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, for the beginning of my career, I got involved in marketing, and I was lucky enough to kind of have some really great people that supported me along the way. Really got a great understanding of the fundamentals of what's required to build a great marketing program. Getting my start to getting to a place where I, went from being more of a general brand marketer to a growth marketer. I still kind of kept a lot of those core principle philosophies. And one of them is resources, right? And the biggest resource for a marketer, is content. You have a need for content when it comes to, running, paid ads, doing some organic marketing, whether it be through social, through email, a variety of channels. But, the thing that was always the first checkbox for me was what kind of resources do we have? And then what capabilities do we have to create more content resources? Because really kind of it all builds off of there. And you have to make sure that you're knocking out some of the basics, making sure that you have that solid voice, making sure that you have a great hook, that great call to action. And, in going into growth marketing, very specifically mobile marketing, when it was at its height, the hook mattered, right? Because, everybody during maybe the 2010s, you're getting bombarded with, ads for apps, whether it be a game, a finance app, lifestyle, you're just getting bombarded. But what really separated the growth marketers who could create scale from the growth marketers who, were challenged was understanding how to test creative, making sure that your experience from your ad matched the experience in the app or on the site. It's really a part of that cohesive strategy. And, as I moved from being, a growth marketer in-house with different brands and, ad agencies, I started to kind of run back into that old problem as I was moving into more of the consulting realm during COVID. And the more I saw people struggling content when I was coming in to help them, run their growth marketing, build out their marketing strategy, you saw that there was a lack of resources, and in certain cases, an understanding of what needed to be done. You basically had to really kind of build these things from scratch, champion resources you need to continue out some of their messaging that they were doing already. In trying to find resources, I think that's where that aha moment came when I really kind of had to roll my sleeves up so I could actually support these companies in their growth. Because the first thing, that fundamental, key piece is making sure that your content is in a good spot.
Mm-hmm. I think looking back, especially when 2020 hit, and I guess there were people that were kind of anticipating this, but I don't think most of the general public really had any anticipation of what COVID was going to do. And, you get into it and then, okay, we're in lockdown. Okay, so yeah, we'll be in lockdown a few weeks and then we'll be out of it 2+ years later.
I mean, so tough for so many reasons, but in a lot of ways, a very interesting, weird, stressful. I mean, like the whole run of emotions. I think, like everybody else, I went into a migration pattern during COVID too. So like the wife and I, we packed up the kids and moved to Barbados because I was consulting. I could do it from anywhere, the work, stayed the same, and it was really just about me connecting with new businesses that were born during COVID, businesses that, especially in e-commerce that, found this new lease on life where they had the ability to grow their business. And you just in really what ended up happening was like when there was that much opportunity for traction, it kind of really exposed some of the needs of some of these businesses in terms of assets that they needed, messaging that they needed, because, they were at a place where they were maybe operating, in like a bootstrap fashion, being very, very thrifty, frugal, trying to, run a business and keep it, in some level of profitability. But then like the big opportunity came, and really what needed to happen next was that ability to create more of a voice for your business, create more assets to run paid ads. There's just a ton of businesses that saw that boom. And, what came along with it was just a need for more resources, and then you start, and like at the same time, one of the biggest winners of that period of time was, TikTok and Twitter to some extent. Right. And it's new content. It's, a need to be present in those spaces, people trying to understand what they should be creating for those spaces. So, it was an opportunity for discovery, being that like everybody was sitting at home, that founder, that head of marketing from that business is at home, and, your home life and your work life are blending together, and you're thinking about it a lot. And, that's where, you started to see some people started to do really well and made that time work because they understood the need. And there were people who were also there to help support, my consulting business grew like during that period of time. And that's something I didn't expect. I went into that thinking, who knows if I'm going to have a job? And then all of a sudden, I have more work than I could ever imagine.
It's funny that you said that. COVID hit, and I had just come out of a really rough period in my business in 2019. Like, it was really rough. Like, it was one of those years where just a lot of extreme circumstances were just, I don't even want to go into it, but it was just really rough year, 2019. Going into 2020, beginning 2020, everything's rough. And, I'm watching all these other people and they're having successful years and I'm struggling, and COVID hit. And then the reverse happened because now everyone had time to write the books and I was swamped. Other people are struggling and I'm growing, because now one of the two main objections that I get, either the one they can't afford me, or most generally the one I get is I just don't have the time. Well, guess what? All these people now all of a sudden had the time. And it was just kind of such a funny switch. But going through that in 2019 allowed me to really help other people in 2020 who were just blindsided by it, because I had been blindsided by things in 2019. So it actually became a real opportunity for me to encourage others that, sometimes you go through rough times, but don't quit, don't give up. It does get better. So I can really appreciate that. I wanted to switch over here because I know our audience is excited to learn about improving your content strategy. So I'm going to let you loose for a few minutes to share some of the things that you've prepared, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, where to start? Talk about like the structure of my business and of strategies I've built. It starts at the beginning with understanding like your brand's voice and having a good grasp on that. Now, I think that like one of the things that stops people here is you have this feeling that you need to have this grandiose plan around brand voice. Like, one of the things I think is important for people to remember is test. You're going to test out a lot of things. Your brand voice might change, your positioning of your business might change. I'm going through that right now. And really, like, what you want to do is you want to continue to test and not be afraid to, put out a voice that is, maybe not perfect, right? Like, like that whole thing of, perfect is the enemy of progress. But the idea here is, understand a ballpark of what, like, of where you want your voice to be, and then start thinking about the problem that you're going to solve, right? Start researching the pain points of your customer and really kind of build a communication to those pain points, and and how you can solve it, how you plus other solution can be that solve. And don't be afraid to position yourself within a group of solutions, right? And again, like that's maybe more on like the B2B side. B2C, obviously like key differentiators are important, but the beginning here is like just identify those problems and say, okay, like what are the mediums for me to publish those on? Is it social media? Is it a revisit of the website? Figure out like what your problem is, and then platform by platform, what makes the sense to convey to your audience that you're expecting to engage in those areas. So once you have that and you have a good sense of like, hey, this is what I'm going to talk about, now you go into testing different messaging approaches. So kind of take a step back at this moment before we kind of talk about like your different approaches. Talk a bit about like the resources and how you want to go about this. So like let's say you're a solopreneur and you're quite busy, right? Like writing that book, creating a marketing strategy are just things that like it's a challenge to have time for, right? But if you can bring in a resource to support you, I think like that is like that's key. So like is it a strategist, a writer, or a designer? Like start first, go and say like, hey, I need to hire a creative agency, or unpack it all, figure out what you want to say, and then bring in some experts to bounce those ideas off of, right? Like I am guilty of falling in love with that my own ideas. If you take that step back to avoid that pitfall, there's a lot of great resources out there. So I think that like that's important. But once you kind of get into like saying, okay, like here's the content I want to create, now you just start doing, right? You just start creating it, whether it's you doing it, a freelancer doing it, somebody on your team. You just need to start create that roadmap, and then just start putting it out there. The content that you publish today might embarrass you a little bit like 2 years from now. That's okay. It's important to get started and start to see the data come in, right? Like, we're talking a lot about creative in that creative like mindset, but like the approach matters, and then the data really, really matters. What I suggest often is just put a few different concepts out there, see which one sticks. If you have a couple flops, you're going to find a winner, and you have to commit to running enough tests out there until you find one. Sure, maybe a strategy isn't perfect, and maybe you need to revisit that at some point. Maybe that's the learning. Far too many give up far too quickly, and that might be from like a resourcing, thinking. You have to give yourself the room to run a bigger test. And one of the ways to kind of, that I think like a misconception that people fall into, is going out there and creating content to then go and back it with like a media-based program. As a person who's bought hundreds of millions of dollars worth of media throughout my career, sitting in the seat I am now with the current landscape of like content publishing opportunities and platforms, put it out there organically. Platforms that have further reach. So mention TikTok again, like they enable you, they give you that ability to really test it out in not an audience that you've cultivated, right? Like that For You page allows you to just see what works, right? In a way that a lot of other platforms don't. So I think that's a great one if it's a fit for your business. And I think it's a fit for more businesses than not. But if it's a fit for your business, test it out. Like there's a lot of learnings you can get there. You have to commit to spending some time on it, but there's a lot of ways to go about doing it in a simpler way, less pressure.
I think, a couple of things that you said that were really important is one is the testing phase. And the testing phase is not fun because you don't see a lot of results in the testing phase. But if you talk to any true marketer, they are going to want, even if you work with a professional marketer, and I've talked to a lot of marketers, most of them want 2 to 3 months where they can assess and test things before they even really start to market you. They've got to get to know what your audience wants so that they can give it to you. So they're going to be putting out stuff. And just like you said, testing, observing the data, finding out what people respond to. And, it's kind of like paying your dues. You have to pay your dues to see the results that you want. And the paying your dues means you go a few months, potentially, figuring all of these things out. And in today's, world of we need it now and, it's got to happen now, that doesn't work with your content strategy, even, podcasting and that. all of these are more longer term strategies that ultimately pay off tremendous results. But you have to do the work first before you see those results. So, I totally agree with you. And you can't give up because you threw out a few pieces of content and, oh well, nobody responded to it. Well, then you've got to test different type of content. It could be that your content is good, maybe the format that you're displaying it in is not conducive to your audience. So there's just so many things that you have to test out and see what your audience responds to.
You said it so well. I will take it a step further here. Now, taking off my entrepreneur hat as the founder of Content Machine and getting back into growth marketing, I would constantly go to the companies I worked with and basically suggest, let's just try anything. I know that that's vague, but like, I'm going to say that as a vague statement. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to prioritize and talk through the approaches and the assets that come with those approaches. What I always asked for, like as a marketer, was to get as many pieces as possible. Like, give me the arsenal so I can go and I can test, I can learn, and I can move the ball forward. And like we'll do a couple waves of that. And then I want to come through with those optimized pieces, like the things that have the right language that helps to convert. And it's that approach that, time and time again, works very, very, very well. Right. Especially like if you're at a place where you don't have like a huge budget to compete with other folks, like we're going to have to test more aggressively in ways that like we're just not going to be able to like buy our way through. Right. And I've experienced both sides of this coin where you're able to spend enough money that you're just going to make it work. And then in other cases where you just need to be smart and strategic, but you don't want to box yourself in too much. You want to create the space for that thing that might just work out of nowhere. Perfect example of this just kind of popped into mind when we were talking here. I was working with this healthcare brand, and we were coming up with all these different ads for their mobile app. And we had this ad where we just basically took a picture like one of those like mannequins, like those like blue kind of just like generic people, and the blue man worked for them on their social media, in their email marketing, and in their paid marketing. But nobody thought that at the beginning, like we were like trying to show shots of families, like a family member receiving great treatments, smiling, happy, but it was something completely outside the box that ended up working.
And that's the thing. The other thing too is sometimes you have to think outside of the box, and don't be afraid to occasionally try something that might be a little bit crazy. I mean, if you're doing that, I do that in small doses because you don't want to do it in too big in case it doesn't work. But if you do something in small doses and you're finding it working, then you can expand it out. So I want to switch gears here for our last few minutes. And I want to talk about where you're at as an entrepreneur, because I know you've got some pretty cool things going on. So talk about that and what are the things that you're working on?
Yeah. So, mentioned Content Machine. Content Machine has been my baby for the past year. I talked about like the lack of, I would say, high quality resources within the content space. And this is something I experienced as a consultant. And I really started kind of like, talking to different consultants, brands, the freelancers themselves. And we got to a really like, interesting place in these conversations that we had for like the first 6 months of the business. And it became really clear that content pros didn't really have great platforms to go to, especially those who are based in North America, because you have platforms like Upwork, which can create a little bit of a race to the bottom if you're, from a country that has a higher cost of living. So what we aimed to do was create a platform that really, stepped away from like that race to the bottom and focused on high quality talent. So all of the talent that is on our platform, and the 20%-ish that we approve of the people who apply, very talented, amazing backgrounds, have worked on incredible projects. And what we're doing is we're matching them to companies who could use that spark, right, and have a need. And what we've seen through this process is just there is this opportunity to build something that is talent first, and that's our focus. like this is a talent first platform where through supporting talent and making sure that they're able to make the wage that meets their cost of living needs, that giving them the work that excites them, we're able to really, produce great work because they're happy. So the talent's happy, client's happy. Yeah. I mean, everybody's winning, right? The services we provide like are, strictly content. So it's everything from a content strategist to social media manager, user generated content creators. We have influencer marketers. We have designers for video, graphic design. And then we have writers who are doing SEO, ghostwriting, copywriting, and editors who are making sure it all sounds great. That's what we've been working on. I was fortunate enough to have a great team of advisors, and then able to bring on some great investors. So we spent a lot of time, and still do, just talking to the talent, talking to companies who are finding challenges, and and hopefully we can help them solve it. But if not, I'm really on this mission to learn, especially as we're kind of going through this economic downturn, just to make sure that we can find ways to help people do more than just keep the lights on over this period of time. Like, find those opportunities to grow or to build themselves in a way that, when that next upswing hits, they're ready to grow right with it.
Yeah. Awesome. So if someone today has heard this and they want to connect with you, Hamilton, what's the best way to connect with you?
2 ways. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I do enjoy that platform. You can also send me an email at hamilton@contentmachine.biz. Would love to hear from you either way.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been a joy and a pleasure having you on the podcast. So this has been Kim Thompson-Pinder and Hamilton Bolduc on the Author to Authority podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on the very next episode. Bye now.
You've been listening to the Author to Authority podcast. The extraordinary word ninja, Kim Thompson-Pinder, has helped over 200 entrepreneurs, professionals, speakers, and coaches write and publish their books that have become incredible marketing tools for their business. And many of those have gone on to become Amazon best-selling authors and have used their books to land high-level clients and get on big stages. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at www.authortoauthoritypodcast.com. See you next time.